So one of the main questions that remains is why did we choose Lady Pink and why is she relevant in the whole scheme of our course? Well, to begin, within this course we have been introduced to visual arts, art history, and art criticism. And through the instruction of this course, we have been taught to think critically about art and the culture that lies behind it and what causes it to be made in the first place. Our modules have been designed to address the role that an artist's culture, class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and/or their gender plays on their artwork. Lady Pink is an artist who creates her artistic identity through her graffiti, murals, illustrations, as well as other pieces. Lady Pink is one of the few female graffiti artists, and because of the male dominance in her field, as well as her personal convictions to speak up on women's issues, she's become the face of feminism and a role model. This goes all in contradiction to the fact that she does not label herself as a feminist. Because of her strong feminist statements, however, we see Lady Pink's relevance to our course. Because she speaks out upon the injustices that women face, children face, and the minorities endure within her artwork, Lady Pink creates meaningful stories. These stories, some of which are on this page. These stories, which result from her experiences as a woman and as a minority, and as one who mentors children, result in a critical thinking of her audience. This critical thinking ultimately results in the audience coming to a deeper and more necessary message, which ultimately brings us closer together as a community and closer to a greater understanding of one another and our differences that make us all great.
Okay. We decided to do our presentation over Sandra Fabra, or as she's more famously known, Lady Pink, the great American graffiti artist. Lady Pink was born in Ambato, Ecuador in 1964 and was raised in Queens, New York. She was introduced to graffiti while studying at the High School of Art and Design in Manhattan when she was 15 years old, and her boyfriend was arrested for writing graffiti and was sent to live in Puerto Rico. She began tagging his name in all of her early work, tagging up her middle school, basically, to mourn the separation. In high school, she wrote graffiti with a couple of crews, painting trains from 1979 when it all began to around 1985. She was pretty much the only woman considered just as good or even better than many of the men in graffiti subculture at the time, and was like the only one capable of competing with them, basically. Her art was featured in exhibitions in her high school years, and she had her first solo exhibition at the Moore College of Art at the age of 21. Hip hop subculture has elevated her to a kind of pop cult figure status for her starring role in the 1982 film Wild Style. These days, she is still active in the art community, mostly painting murals and canvases, lecturing at colleges throughout the Northeast states, and through mural workshops at the small mural company that she runs with her husband. She has worked her way up to a quote high art status, with many of her canvas paintings featured in popular museums like the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Brooklyn Museum, both in New York, and the Groningen Museum of Holland. Canvas paintings such as the one we are going to look at for this presentation. The Death of Graffiti. She painted this when she was around 19 years old, and white trains were called white elephants at the time. And to graffiti artists, they were like giant moving canvases. The painting features her as a young girl standing on a mountain of spray paint in front of a train car with her name tagged on it, following a white, unpainted train car. Her name is tagged on the wall next to her as well, and in another interview, she talked about how at the time it was strange to see how graffiti was evolving from its origins in the 70s to what it was then, moving from trains to walls, and how now it's everywhere.
We chose The Death of Graffiti as our piece to critique, mainly because we all really enjoyed it aesthetically. In an interview, Lady Pink talks about the emergence of the white trains in the city during the 80s called white elephants. The piece shows a white elephant and an old silver train covered in graffiti, as well as a young Lady Pink who's naked, standing on top of a mountain of spray paint cans, pointing at the white elephant. The juxtaposition between the old graffiti covered train and the rundown buildings in the background versus the shiny new white elephant is what drew most of us to the piece. Lady Pink said that at the time, she and many of her friends thought that all their work would vanish due to the emergence of the white elephants. Although Lady Pink does not consider herself much of an activist, the fact that she is naked in the painting seems to be a strong statement as well, which my other group members will examine later in this project.
Lady Pink has many different intentions with her artwork. She has done hundreds and hundreds of canvases, and in one interview when she was asked if she remembered a certain message or intention from a certain piece of art, she replied that she didn't know what piece you were talking about, and even if she did, she probably wouldn't remember the intention at that specific time. In this piece, called The Death of the Graffiti, it shows her standing on top of a mountain of spray paint cans. The gray train resembles the past. The white train resembles the new train that had been introduced at the time. She viewed this white train as a fresh canvas that she could now paint on. Next, she said that she doesn't really care if you get the intention of her artwork. That's not really important to her. She said that what is important is that she gets something off her chest. She's able to convey a certain theme or something that's important to her in her art. She thinks that she believes that she has no control of what people label her. She doesn't think she's a feminist, but when people label her that, she doesn't really mind. She doesn't really see herself as much of an activist either. One thing that she does like to speak on, though, is women's issues. She says that she's encountered sexism a lot in her life. In one interview, she said, "It's not like I'm trying to be a feminist per se, but I'm just speaking out of injustices." A major theme in her art, or intention I guess you could say, was that she makes women look very strong in her artwork, and she often uses the body to emphasize strength and power.